Welcome to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I want to thank all of you for being very, very patient here. I know we're running a bit late. Technical difficulties, unfortunately. I'm on my own this evening. Mike Ricksecker here, author and ghost historian. My co-hostess, Vanessa Hogel, had to, she had to bow out, but basically because of our technical difficulties, and it's all Skype's fault. So it started with, I'll just give you a little rundown real quick. I know those watching the replay are going to be like, I don't want to see all this. Just fast forward a few minutes and you'll get to the meat. So you have a wonderful guest this evening, Michelle Hamilton. Really happy to have her back this evening. But started with me where I was forced to upgrade Skype. They would not let me press on any further with the older version that I was using, even though it worked perfectly. So I had to do a whole bunch of reconfiguration there, but it seemed like we were going to get it live there just at the last minute. And then, of course, Skype was acting up for Michelle. And so it's all Skype's fault this evening. But we move on, and so we were trying to get it to work, and so in order to make this happen, Michelle's on the phone. If Vanessa would have stayed on, we would have had all kinds of feedback, so we had to let Vanessa go. She's down there in the chat. So thank you, Vanessa, for hanging out in the chat. So, again, thank you guys for being very patient and hanging in there. And Michelle, happy to have you back.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Great, and I think we're just finally getting Skype to connect to you now.
Really? You got Skype working now?
What's that?
It says he is away.
Oh, it says that you're away.
All right. I guess don't worry about it at this point because we're
don't worry about it. Okay.
We're live now, so don't worry about it. So we've had Michelle on here before. She's a fantastic author. We had her on talking about spiritualism and the Lincoln White House, which is I Would Still Be Drowned in Tears, that book, which is fantastic. She also has another, My Heart in the Cause, Civil War Diary of James Myers, which is very, very interesting. She has new stuff coming out here soon, but she's also a living historian, very, very involved in the world of history. So, Michelle, you want to go ahead and kind of give us a rundown of what you're doing?
Well, I am a living historian and author. I also am a museum house manager. I'm the Museum of the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Yeah. Mary Washington House, Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is really interesting. And the $20 super chat from Robert White, Australian $20 super chat, says, "Darn Skype, don't fix what ain't broke." Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, so yeah, you've also had a number of submissions to the Encounters with the Paranormal series that we have here at Haunted Road Media, and you're going to be at the Ferry Plantation here coming up here very soon. So it seems like you've quite a bit involved.
Yes, I am looking forward to seeing you all at Ferry Plantation, excuse me.
Right. So let's get in. I guess let's get into the ferry a little bit, since that's where we're going to be. That's the feature of the next Encounters with the Paranormal book, which for those of you that aren't familiar, what we do every year here for the last several years is we feature a specific endangered haunted location that we're going to help contribute to help them kind of stay afloat with whatever little funds that we can, but part of the proceeds of those books go to help out with that. And so this year we are featuring the Ferry Plantation, and there's Tom McNicholas with a $10 super chat says shit happens. It does. So Michelle, I know you've been there. I think that was the second time we met was at the ferry. So you want to go ahead and tell us? I know you've done some research there. You're quite familiar with the history, so you want to give us a little bit of a rundown of the ferry?
Yeah, Ferry Plantation is in the Virginia Beach area of Virginia, right up on the Chesapeake Bay. And so the land itself has seen a lot of history. It was had first settlements in the 1600s, so very early in the Virginia colony. And the building itself dates to the 1830s. The area is connected with Grace Sherwood, who is known as the Witch of Pongo.
Right, Grace Sherwood. And now she's one, you get a little bit into her history, is pretty tragic, what happened with her. But, you know, I mean, she survived a witch conviction.
She did. She was one of, I believe, the only a woman in colonial Virginia history to be tried for witchcraft in the Virginia colony. There was other women suspected of witchcraft. They would take it to a certain level. Somebody was back up say she was the only woman convicted for witchcraft in colonial Virginia, because they would take the women to court, and in the other cases there was not enough evidence, and the magistrate rejected the claim. Grace, she is convicted. She actually has a dunking, where she is dunking water to test to see if she is a witch. She fails that test, and it appears she spent several years imprisoned in the jail in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Okay, and what happened when she was there?
That's kind of a shadowy part. She spends a few years in jail, maybe about 7 to 10 years. The records are unclear, but she is released at some point in the early 1700s, and she goes back to the area around what is now Virginia Beach, and she appears to die in her 70s, which is a pretty good age for a colonial woman, of natural causes.
Wow, interesting. Guys, I do see, hang on, Michelle, I do see all the comments in there. Just to get the phone call going, it's kind of really jerry-rigged, so I am trying to play with the sound settings a little bit. So we're working on that. Now, Michelle, some of the interesting history about it, and also sad, is the you know, how the plantation was basically left to the city. I know like 4 acres were supposed to be left alone to the plantation, but I don't know all the legalities of what happened there, but they ended up, you know, having that land developed anyway. And you know, we've both talked with Heather more about this, about you know, the headstones, the graveyard that basically got bulldozed into the creek or river there. You know, there was a Native American mound that was in the back that I guess the tennis court is now on top of. So you know, very tragic as far as, you know, that piece of history. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, there are a lot of properties that have been preserved here in Virginia, but there's always going to be the concern for historic preservation that we can't still lose these properties. Many of these museums, they are not-for-profit. They receive no state, local, or government funding, or what they do is limited and is depending on the, you know, generosity of the local government, how much they're willing to give to their heritage sites. And right now, heritage sites are a little political. There are some people who are uncomfortable with the history that they may be representing, or a period in time they may be representing. So really, all of these properties are in a danger, and museums can go under. Several museums did go under nationwide during the Great Recession, and even the risk to disasters, like what happened in Rio de Janeiro over the weekend, where their Natural History Museum went up in smoke, and 200 years of history is now completely lost. I heard that so far they've only found a smattering of artifacts that survived.
Yeah, you lose pieces of history like that, and you can't get them back. You know, it's
no, they're not forever.
No, yeah, gone forever. And Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we try to do. People like what we do here at Haunted Road Media. People like you trying to reach out to those and kind of make sure that history stays intact. But then you lose places like this. Is there any way to try to at least preserve the memory, even if you don't have the artifacts anymore?
Just to sort of also preserve the history and the stories of the people, the events, like people like Grace Sherwood. We don't have a lot of physical artifacts from her. We don't have her house. We don't have too much written records, but just the story of her and what she went through and her life gives you an idea of colonial women's life in this very early period of Virginia history.
Right. We do have a question. This is from Vanessa. Did anyone report fallout over her convictions?
There was some fallout. She really, what Grace Sherwood was, she may have practiced witchcraft, we don't know, but really, she was a wise woman. She was a healer. She was, we consider her to be a midwife. So she would be the ones that ever, the child had an earache, she would go to Grace, and she would, she knew the folk medicine, the herbs to cure both humans and animals. And so there is, usually at the heart of a lot of these convictions is going to be dispute over land. I haven't done, not sure that there was a land dispute over was it Grace, but there's always going to be some dispute with the powers that be, and they use witchcraft as a fallout to get her out of the way. And there was some controversy, she had children, she had adult children, that somebody's obviously lobbying for her to get her out of the jail, to go and appeal to the royal governor. Virginia is a royal colony, so they had her appeal to the royal governor, who is basically standing in for the king here in Virginia, to appeal that her conviction was wrong and to get her out of jail. And obviously the royal governor agreed and was able to give her a royal pardon.
Yeah, it's interesting, the political landscape back then and how all those different things worked. Now, how did that change over the years as far as how they would handle such a situation?
Well, as the 17th century goes on, Grace Sherwood, she is born in the 1600s and she dies in the early 1700s. As the 1700s go on, referred to as the 18th century, the Enlightenment era came in and the belief in witchcraft went away, or the idea of it as it being legally punished went away. So the court started to reject witchcraft claims, and so if you had a dispute with somebody, you took it on another matter, and they dropped the witchcraft accusation.
Right. Now, was she the only one in that area that was convicted, or charged, or what have you, or were there others?
There were other women in the early part of the colony. At the time period, the population centers of Virginia will be on the river, and be through the Chesapeake Bay. There was one case where I found it surprising that a Washington, one of George Washington's ancestors, got involved with a case where there was a woman on a ship. The ship was coming across from England, coming to the Maryland colony, which is right next door to Virginia colony. The ship had a lot of bad weather, a lot of misfortune, and there was one woman on board, and the ship crew blamed the woman for witching them. I don't know why she would want to be on a boat and be witches at the same time. So they're blaming her for the misfortunes, tried her on board the ship, and actually hanged her. And when the ship arrives to Maryland, some of the members on board were upset about this and was trying to go and get either the Maryland royal governor or the Virginia royal governor to open up charges on the ship captain when he was still in port to punish him for basically murdering this woman. And somehow, and the historians really aren't sure how or why, one of the Washingtons got involved, tried to get a judge to hear the case and was rejected.
Wow, interesting. Sorry, I'm going through a couple of the questions here. So, comment from Karen Whitaker. So, the male doctors didn't like competition, so now she's a witch and must suffer. Is that pretty much the case back then? Was they were seen as competition for healing practices?
Very much so. At this time, in between the 1600s and the 1700s, we're starting to see the development of medical colleges, especially in Scotland. And Edinburgh was the heart of where you were a good doctor, you came through Edinburgh. But at the same time period, they had the midwives who were primarily involved with, the common ailments, but also with bringing children into the world. In this time period, if your woman was in labor, you had a better chance of her midwife treated her. There's a higher success rate for successful live birth and a successful recovery for the woman versus ever a trained physician came in. And so there was a lot of competition between the doctors and the women, and a lot of trash talking on both sides.
Yeah, well, and a lot of these midwives would be charged with witchcraft as well, right?
Most of the witchcraft outbreaks usually will be centering on either the midwife of the community or the woman that's the loner, the woman that is single or widowed. Her husband may or may not have abandoned her, and she's not living the way society expects her to live. Either she's cranky or she's not going to church enough. There's just something wrong about her.
Yeah, so basically they'd single out the oddballs and call them a witch.
Yeah, the Salem witch trials. The first person they accused was Tituba, who was the barbarian slave of the Reverend Paris that the witchcraft phenomenon started off. At first they blamed Tituba, and then the next person they went to was the local woman who lived in a shack at the edge of the community and had already had disputes with half of the members of Salem town and Salem village.
Now, would that news of Salem, or even there, around Virginia Beach, would that news have traveled and influenced one area or the other?
It would to a certain degree. You're going to see it more in the New England colonies. Mm-hmm. The southern colonies were very spread out still at this time period. So it will trickle down maybe over to Maryland and maybe into Pennsylvania, but the witchcraft phenomenon or the witchcraft trials really were not that much of a focus here in the southern colonies that you'll see with the Puritans in New England.
Right. I guess I just see Massachusetts and Virginia really connected because they were really the two states that spearheaded the Revolution. So
they'll be more connected by the Revolution than they are during the time of Grace Sherwood. At this point period, they're having two completely different governments. The Virginia colony is being run by the royal governor, and what we now know is Massachusetts is actually split into two different colonies. There's the Massachusetts Bay Colony and then the Plymouth Plantation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's going way back there. Judy is going back here a little bit. Asking, are they open, specifically about the Ferry Plantation, are they open for ghost tours? So, well, yeah. So they do investigations at the Ferry Plantation, and Michelle and I are going to be there for the ParaCon there this coming weekend. So, I know we were talking a lot about witches there. We can get back on that here in a little bit, but just to kind of roll back into our questions here. So, Michelle, you want to talk a little bit about the ParaCon and what people can expect from you there?
I will have my books for sale. I will have my book on spiritualism, and then I'll have my three other books on history. My biography of Mary Washington, who was the mother of George Washington. I'll also the cause.
You kind of broke up there.
He was a hospital steward. And then also I also had edited a book on Civil War etiquette, and that book will also be available.
Fantastic. Yeah, I guess I only have two of yours, and you've had more published since then. So Yeah, great books, great books. I mean, and we did talk quite a bit about the Lincoln book, the I Would Still Be Drowned in Tears, Spiritualism in the Lincoln White House, and that was a really interesting conversation before. And I know you're doing a bit more writing around the Civil War era, and I don't know how much you want to divulge on that, but is there anything you want to talk about there?
Yeah, I'm currently wrapping up. I did a study of Civil War ghost stories based on actual accounts and newspapers during the Civil War era. And I take it from 1860 to 1865, from basically January 1st of 1860 to December 31st of 1865, basically what historians consider to be the Civil War period. And I was able to access several databases of period newspapers and found out people are seeing a lot of ghosts even during the Civil War.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of interesting because I know when you were telling me about that recently, because you've submitted a manuscript to Haunted Road Media, no secret there, which is fantastic. You're a great writer, so I'm looking forward to really diving into that. And I found it just ironic because it's something that Shauna and I got into here recently in this area, a little bit later than the Civil War era, more like late 1800s, early 1900s, but still, yeah, coming across all these different reports of ghost sightings. And so it seems to me that the belief system was a little bit different back there, where nowadays, in any, I don't know, reports in the newspapers are all about paranormal investigators, and whether maybe it's a TV spotlight or something like that, as opposed to some of those older sightings were more about some sort of spook that was seen, or maybe it was a lady in black in the graveyard, or there was a report of something down the road. What have you been finding? Is similar to that, or?
It was very similar. It was average people would be going about their day, and they would see a spook. Or what was really fascinating to me was how many Civil War soldiers, the North and the South, were reporting that when they were at a hospital or at a Civil War prison, that they were seeing ghosts of their comrades. They're seeing Civil War ghosts. There were several times where a Union soldier would be at a place that was a Confederate hospital, and they would claim that they couldn't stay at that facility because they were seeing spirits there.
So they were seeing like recently deceased, you're saying they're comrades, they're comrades in arms. So recently deceased soldiers, their friends they were actually seeing walk through there while they were, being tended to.
What they were seeing is that the Civil War is very fluid. So especially in places like West Virginia, like one of the stories was taking place in West Virginia, and at that point it was still the state of Virginia. So the Confederates have evacuated out, and so the Union soldiers have moved into a hospital, or a facility that was being used as a hospital. And they will be studying into the night, and next thing they'll hear their fellow Union soldiers screaming and are disturbed, and of course everyone gets aroused thinking that it maybe it's an attack, and when everyone calms it down and they're saying, what happened? And one of them says, we can't stay here anymore, I saw a Confederate ghost.
Oh, okay. So they're being alarmed by the ghosts, originally thinking it's an attack. That's interesting.
Yeah, they're seeing ghosts of Civil War soldiers, or there's reports coming out of some of the Civil War prisons. Where there's one from Massachusetts where when the Confederate soldiers were released, they're telling that their guards were complaining that they were seeing spirits of dead Confederates at the prison.
So even the guards were reporting the activity. So that's interesting. So
yeah,
now,
this one particular place is still reported to be haunted to this day, and and they still say that the ghosts date back to the Civil War.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. It sounds like there were many sightings back then. Given guards reported, and the soldiers that are staying there reporting all these different things. So now we still have these historic locations around. Do you think that the ghost sightings there have maybe lessened over the years, or because having done my own book on Maryland, which has a lot of Civil War history in it and reports of Civil War soldiers, while there are those reports, it doesn't seem like a daily occurrence or what have you. Where it sounds like back then, when all that was going on, there were frequent reports. Do you think maybe it's tailed off a little bit over the years as we go further on in time?
That's the $1,000,000 question for all ghost hunting. I think I kind of accept the fact that maybe it goes in cycles. I think I kind of think that you're going to be seeing, like if you go to Gettysburg, I think the odds are going to be very strong that you're going to be running into a spirit, especially during the anniversary periods. And I'm going to say that's going to be from July to November when they had the battle and then they had the hospital. So I kind of go by that theory a little bit, and I think there's also going to be like times where, like in any activity, there's going to be dull periods and active periods.
Yeah, well, I've heard all kinds of reports out of Gettysburg. People seeing soldiers marching, they think they're reenactors, and they're just not. So Vanessa has a question here. Does Michelle have ghost experiences on her tours?
While I give tours?
Yeah.
Not during my tours, but there's been times when my property, the property that I'm at, is quiet, and then every once in a while you'll hear something, or something will move on its own. And the house had a very long history where I work at. Not only was it the house that Mary Washington lived in for 17 years of her life, but also afterwards it was a boys' school. There was activity during the Civil War, and so every once in a while something will happen, and we'll tend to blame it on the boys.
No, the boys. Okay. So it's a nice cross section of history there at the Mary Washington house.
Yes, it's almost like, because people walk in and say, well, how old is the house? And I look at them and I say, well, it depends on which room we're in. Because almost room by room, the history of the property changes. Right.
Yeah, and a lot of older structures like that, you have these additions and pieces that were added on over the years. You may have one section of the house that's 300 years old, and the newest section is maybe 100, but you have like a smattering of other ages in between too. So it always makes for an interesting set of stories. So, and the Ferry Plantation is a bit like that too.
Exactly. I think believe some of it dates back, but there's part of it that dates to the colonial era, the courthouse, and part of it, and the next part of it we're into an 1830s section of the house.
Yeah, because you can't see it, but I'm going to bring it up here. I had some photos that I showed earlier, and I know you can't see it because you're not on Skype. But yeah, so that section over there on the left is the courthouse that Michelle was referring to, and then it kind of progressively gets a little bit newer. So yeah, it's really interesting how they just build out from things like this. And I guess another thing about the ferry is that a lot of the bricks were from the original plantation house. This is not the original plantation house, and so that the original burned in a fire. So
I get it very common in these buildings that there were fires, or when you especially. You're cooking over flame, your light sources from a fire, or from a candle, or from kerosene. A lot of these properties did suffer some fire damage. In fact, we were doing renovation work this last year at the Mary Washington house, and in a section of the house that we're still not quite too sure when it was actually added on. When we removed out a 19th century fireplace mantle to be restored, and then we put back on. It's now back on. It's gorgeous. But behind it, we found evidence that a minor fire was starting between the fireplace and the mantle.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So now let me ask you this. Because I've spoken a bit about this before. One of my older presentations. I've been doing more with shadow people lately. But like I used to give a presentation on the relationship between history and the paranormal, and how they kind of have this symbiotic relationship between each other. So what do you find there with that relationship between history and the paranormal?
It's kind of like one historian one time said about historians and novelists. We're not sisters who share each other's clothing. We're more like brothers who throw food at each other.
I'm sorry, we're more like what?
We're more like brothers that throw food at each other.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's kind of like we're siblings, but we don't always get along with each other.
Right, right. Which, of course. So you think that history and the paranormal kind of scrap together a little bit?
Well, yes, because a lot of historians are traditional bound. We go to colleges, we get our nice little pre-degrees, and we try to be very serious and very stuffy at times, and we're doing serious history here, and we have no room for those ghost stories, those made-up stories,
right.
that history. And you look away. Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Do you find that a lot of times in your type of environment that you're kind of pushed to keep a certain narrative rather than stay open for a different interpretation of the things that you find?
Yes, I think, and that's one problem where historians still get even with traditional history. We are very stuck to our theories. We don't want to admit that we're wrong sometimes, and sometimes even in the face of overwhelming evidence, we'll still stick to our interpretation. So sometimes there is an unwillingness to listen to the other side, to readjust interpretations. And that's just one problem historians in general we have right now, period.
Does that come from like a fear of admitting that some of our predecessors were wrong? Or is it more like a funding issue that if you don't stick to a certain narrative that you may not receive certain funding? Because I've heard of that from more of like archaeologist point of view, where you start talking some of these, what they might call nonsense, and they'll yank your funding. So have you had similar experiences like that?
Not so much for funding. I just think that sometimes historians can tend to be very stubborn. We believe that there's a thing called historiography where we study what other historians have said, and it's almost like a giant game of telephone where you're going to regurgitate what the next person says and keep it on the line. And I'll give you an example. Mary Washington is George Washington's mother. You pick up a biography to churn out, it won the Pulitzer Prize, it's a big mammoth book, a lot of people have read it. It continues to reinforce the interpretation that Mary Washington was a difficult woman, a cranky woman, a demanding woman, that she was unhappy, that she was an unhappy parent, wasn't very proud of George, and the historian who bases that interpretation bases it off of what other historians have written, and they're basically all repeating what one historian wrote named Douglas Southall Freeman in the 1940s. And so they're all repeating the same line of thought. Right. Instead of actually looking at her actual writings, looking at what the family actually said. In fact, turn out, the thing I think the most umbrage was, there's a line where one of Mary's nephews said, "Of the mother, I was 10 times more afraid of her than my own parent." Turnout ends the sentence right there. When you read the actual quote, there's a comma, and he goes on to say, "But she ought me in the midst of her kindness, for she was truly kind." And then he goes on rest of the paragraph that this nephew wrote is praising Mary. But all Chernow does is take that first sentence, slap a period on it, and ends the sentence.
Well, yeah, and you know, that's just one person's opinion too, and yeah, there's plenty of people that you encounter in life that for whatever reason you don't click, and you're almost like oil and water together, and to other people you may be the nicest person in the world, but the two of you together just don't gel. And so I think it kind of does a disservice that you're only taking one person's opinion, even if you wrote other nice things about her, that still it's just one person's opinion, and you should be taking into account all of that.
And as a historian, it's slightly dishonest. As an historian, I was trained that you present the evidence of both sides of the issue, and you let your own reader make the judgment. In my book, I Was Still Be Drowned in Tears, I say I really don't definitively answer with Lincoln a spiritualist, because the answer is I don't know. Lincoln never answered the question, but I want to give you supporting evidence to say that he probably was very interested in it, or would probably be very likely he was a spiritualist.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he had that interest, but because of his office, he didn't want to commit. Would you call that a fair assessment?
Yeah, in religion, in a lot of areas, Lincoln was a little bit of a commitment phobe.
Yeah. Yeah, but Mary Todd Lincoln, especially after the White House, it seems like she just dove, headlong deeper into the spiritualism.
Yeah, she did. At the time that she went headlong into spiritualism was also probably one of the darker periods of spiritualism, when the laws of the frauds and the phonies came out.
Yeah. That
still dampened the reputation of spiritualism, and she went into it and didn't have a safety net and got taken advantage of pretty bad.
Let me ask you, just spiritualism movement question specifically here. So the Fox sisters, now, by all accounts, at least from my research, that they were frauds, but because you had one of the sisters basically come out and say, yes, we were frauds, and describe in detail how they basically fooled everybody. But there's still people today that try to say, well, no, she was lying about being a fraud, and they were all legit. What do you think?
That's a great question. I don't know about the Fox sisters. There's a great biography on them called Talking to the Dead, and it follows the line. Even the historian, even the biographer just says, I don't know. I don't know if they were lying or not. Because at one point, yes, in the 1880s, one of the sisters went out and said, with the support of the other, we lied, we have double jointed toes, we can crack our crack our toes.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, she recanted that. And at that time period, both sisters were having a pretty serious addiction to alcohol. So they were alcoholics at this time period. So it could have gone either way. They're both kind of an unreliable narrator to their own life story. And so for even that, it's unclear ever they were or not. And there's a lot of things that you can go, okay, they're totally faking it. And then there's other things in the story where it's more unclear, there's more mystery. The fact that years later, when the house that the girls were living at the time, the farmhouse in Hyattsville, New York, that started it, and one of the claims, spiritualism began, was that there was a murdered peddler in the basement, and in the early 1900s, when the house was falling apart, and the children were playing down there, and they actually they claimed they found human remains in this basement. So there's things on both sides of the story that it's just weird.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one before. So they found human remains in the basement, ever identified, or at least speculated upon?
The remains have disappeared. After this, in the early 1900s, they moved the house to a place called Lily Dale. The spiritualist community is still there in Upper New York. And in the early, about the 1940s, 30s or 40s, the house mysteriously burned down.
Oh, wow.
And apparently all of the evidence went with it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Figures. And also, with the spiritualism movement, you also had that conflict between Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which I always thought was kind of interesting because it seemed like, okay, they were friends, and then they ended up battling each other on this one specific topic, and it seemed like Houdini went out of his way to try to prove the spiritualism movement was invalid, and it seemed like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, very learned individual. Of course, we all love his his writings, the Sherlock Holmes writings, and he seemed to like pay a blind eye to it all, like commissioning another set of the Cottingley Fairies photos and stuff like that. So I don't know if you have an opinion on that conflict between those two, which I always thought was fascinating.
Well, Conan Doyle's a fascinating character because we associate him with his creation, which is Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
And Sherlock Holmes and Conan Doyle could not have been more different.
Right.
In fact, Conan Doyle kind of disliked Holmes. He disliked this idea of this really know-it-all detective, and he tried to kill
stopped
Holmes
writing
off.
him for a while.
When Holmes goes over the falls, and he tries to kill him off, and there was such an outcry. From the reading public that he had to bring him back, and so Conan Doyle was a smart author. He realized that I have to make some money here, and people want to read Holmes, so okay, I'll bring you Holmes. But Conan Doyle was very much into the spiritualist movement. He lost a son in World War I. His first wife died from tuberculosis, and so the appeal of spiritualism, the idea that you could contact the dead, was something that Conan Doyle was very fond of. I know there's been some allegations. I haven't done too much into Houdini. I know that he exposed a lot of fraudulent mediums, ones that you're able to expose. But there was a lot of spiritualists who alleged that Houdini would frame those he could not bust. That he did find mediums that baffled him, and to keep face, Houdini was planting evidence on them, was framing them for fraud. So that's that claim. There is also a claim that his wife, Roosevelt, did in fact contact Houdini through a medium, and that she was starting to go public about it, and that Houdini's friends were so aghast at this that they forced her to retract the press release that she had found a genuine medium. So there's a lot of rumor and innuendo even with that story about who was really honorable, who was really telling the truth.
Yeah, and it's all left up to interpretation these days, and people have their own opinions. I think they kind of depending on what their opinion is, kind of skew it one direction or the other. So who really knows what happened back then? We have a $20 super chat from BD Flint. She says, "Forgot it was Tuesday." Well, the holiday kind of screwed that up, and maybe it's the holiday that's kind of been screwy with the technology today. I don't know. Let's get to some of the questions that are down there in chat. We are going to have to get wrapping it up and cut it a little short. I'm sorry, Michelle. We do have the second show coming up here, but let's get to some of the questions. From Tom McNicholas, this is back on the Ferry Plantation. Have there been any artifacts that were checked for any spiritual activity? It's a question for you, but I think we can both speak to. That's one of the things they do there.
Not that I'm aware of.
What, as far as some of the objects in the home? I'm
sure there's something that will, when you have that place is packed with artifacts, I'm sure there's something that has an attachment or a memory to it. I'm just not off the top of my head aware of one.
Okay. I just figured with all the investigating that goes on there. So let's see. Grizz is in the house. All right. Good to see you, Grizz. Just see everybody shouting out Grizz. What did I miss here? So there's been a lot of chat going by, so I'm sure I missed something. Let's So Vanessa commenting, people's current situations will affect their opinions of past and future behavior. Yep. All right. So I guess that was it for the questions. They've just kind of all been chatting amongst themselves, but staying relatively close to topic. So, okay. Kind of interesting. So, yeah, Candy Orton saying the entire internet is whack tonight. I agree with that. All right. So, well, let's go ahead and Michelle, how can people find you?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, Michelle Hamilton. That's MICHELLE Hamilton, HAMILTON on Facebook. Also, my website is michellelhamilton.net. That's MICHELLEHAMILTON.net. And you can find and also all my books are available on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will be at the Ferry Plantation this coming weekend.
Yes, I will.
In Virginia Beach.
And also, yep, I'll be at the Ferry Plantation, and also some of my books are, especially the Mary Washington book, is available through the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Yeah, which if you guys are in the area, by all means, check out the Mary Washington House for sure. And if you're around, Ferry this weekend, it's Ferry, named for the ferry that used to go through there. Not the ferries out in the woods. We would love to see you. So Judy Wilson does have a question here at the end. Is there a haunted place you would love to go and check out?
Oh, there's lots of places. I really love the battlefields. I really love the historic house museums. So I'm always looking to find a new museum or a new haunted place here in my little area.
Fantastic. And B3 Airspace says, I have read Michelle's books and they are very, very good. Yes, absolutely. She says she adores haunted history. So, Sean Oldsmith, now all the questions are coming. I see you guys. Oh, he's going to end the show. Let's get some questions in there. I see how it is. Sean Oldsmith from Australia asked, Michelle, what was your best location?
One of the best locations was the first location that I worked in the museum, which is in the Whaley House in Old Town, San Diego. We're known for being America's most haunted. So I had a lot of really interesting experiences there. One of the stories of my favorite account is in Accounts of the Paranormal Volume 2.
Yep.
So that is always going to be near and dear to my heart. I've also had some amazing experiences in Gettysburg. I've had some interesting pictures in Gettysburg. I've also smelled the scent and perfume around the hospital site at least twice so far. Oh,
interesting. Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Whaley House. You had the story for Encounters with Paranormal 2, but our own Don Francisco down there in chat has also had some experiences there at the Whaley House and has submitted a Whaley House story for Encounters 4. So I think it's kind of interesting that that's a repeat location within the books. So I know you worked there for a while.
That's where it was my first museum job there. I started there when I was 15 as a volunteer. It's very near and dear to my heart. It's a very unique place for activity, and that's a place where it started off where it's very quiet activity, and then but by the time I was leaving, it was getting more active. Definitely getting more active, paranormal wise.
All right, very cool. All right, so yeah, Candy Orton's already saying stay tuned for the next show. Yeah, we got to get wrapping up here because it's already well past. So, Michelle, I don't know if you want to stick around for the shout-outs at all. So, but we're going to get into that real quick, and then we got to kick over to the next show. So, all
right,
it's up to you if you want to stick around or not.
I'll stick around for the shout-outs.
You stick around for the shout-outs. All right. Mike, are you taping it? What am I taping? I don't know. my taping. I mean, we always record what we're doing right now because it stays up on YouTube, or am I not understanding? But just throw it down there while I get in the shout-outs. So first, let's get to Super Chat Superstars. That would be Robert White, Tom McNicholas, and BD Flint, our Super Chat Superstars for the evening. Thank you guys very, very much. Absolutely appreciate it. And also thank you guys for bearing with all the technical difficulties tonight and starting late. And it's been a heck of a first hour to this evening. A little over than that. Since we've been actually working on the technical difficulties for a while. So, all right. And I did catch in there that we hit 8,000 subscribers along the way during the show. So awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about that on Inside the Upside Down. So, okay, shout outs. We got Tim Schoen down there, Sean Oldsmith, Paranormal Fan 11. Thank you guys very, very much. Also, of course, our chat shenanigator Shauna is down in there. Thank you very much. My love for shenanigating the chat. And I did see that you were having YouTube issues as well. It's the internet tonight. I don't know. And then Donald Gorton, our Cheshire Cat in the house. Thank you for helping out as well. So, Candy Orton, thanks for joining us again tonight. There's BD Flint. Thank you as well. The Haglin, thanks for hanging out tonight. B3 Airspace. So, Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. We've got Tom McNicholas, B3 Airspace, Zippy Davis, BD Flint, Pamela Queen, and Andrew Cox. Thank you all for being Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. There's Sean Gilmore. He's in the house tonight. All right, Sean. Paranormal Buzz Radio. That's Shay. Another account, Shay. All right. Chipper Terry, thank you very much, Chipper, for joining us again this evening. We also have Bethany Warner. Thanks again. There's Robert White, our friend from Australia, as well as Sean Oldsmith. The Fairy Queen of Haunted Road Media, Diane Hilbert. Thanks for joining us tonight. There's Betty Lange. Thanks for joining us. Good show. Nice speaker. I know it's whatever we could do with just to get it going. What did I say? I'm not going to say it. Shauna knows what I'm about to say. Judy Wilson, thanks for joining us, and thanks for the questions tonight. There's Grizz, Lightning Bear Grizz. Thanks for joining us tonight. Grizz, always appreciated. Katie Palmer, thanks for joining us again. There's Zippy Davis, always appreciated. Zippy's always like one of the usually the first commenter on all the videos. Sometimes he gets passed up by a couple people. It's usually Zippy. Who else we have? Joe Chandler's in the house. Thank you, Joe, for joining us tonight. Who else do we have in there? I know there are quite a few of you, even with all of the difficulties. There's, of course, Vanessa, my co-host. Co-hostess, where was she tonight? She was in the chat. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. There's X Group Home Kid. Yeah, all right. Let me scroll all the way back down. There's Karen Whitaker. Thank you for joining us again tonight. Karen Sim Cooking, thanks for joining us. Always good to see new faces in the house. And anybody else? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We'll kick over to the next show. Yep, there's Tom. What are you doing? Rolling eyes. I see. All right. Again, Michelle, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and sorry for all the difficulties and just Skype. We hate you tonight. We absolutely hate you tonight.
Well, thank you. Also, I'm sorry that we had to bump Vanessa off. I was looking forward to talking to her, but sometimes, technology, we love it when it works well, and we hate it when it doesn't.
Absolutely. We've come to rely on it a little too much, and it's great when it works. So, all right, Michelle, I'll see you this weekend.
Same here. I'm looking forward to it. Take care.
All right. I'm going, and the rest of you, I will see you with Shauna here in just a few minutes. For Inside the Upside Down, we'll be talking spiritual attachments. Stay tuned. I gotta just find the right screen.